Known Miss Moore for I have known Miss Moore for 2 years, and in the capacity of being a student in our Teen CEO program. She has made such a positive impact in my life. With the Teen CEO program, she helped me shape my vision on what I wanted to do in business, and then actually allowed me to make that vision into a reality. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to read her biography. Miss Moore is a thought-provoking leader, visionary, and advocate in New York City, whose passion for serving impoverished children is evident in her extensive professional and personal history and her many community-oriented achievements. Miss Moore has always known her purpose in life, even at the early age of 14 years old, when she became a caseworker aide at the family support system and suddenly saw her life calling and illuminating a career pathway ahead of her. Ever since this moment, she has been dedicated to creating opportunities in her community, lifting up young people out of poverty, and empowering local leaders to build a brighter future for the most disadvantaged families in their neighborhoods. Ms. Moore launched I Raise Girls and Boys International Corporation in 2013 to directly respond to the urgent needs of minority youth in New York City. Her organization is dedicated to safeguarding youth, restoring the community from the inside out, and raising the quality of life for minority families. She has transformed the lives of more than 10,000 of our city's most vulnerable youth. The success of so many kids can be attributed to this one individual whose light shines brightly on every child and parent who has the meaningful opportunity of benefiting from Mrs. Moore's vision. Shaniqua's passions include education, mental health, and civic engagement. She believes in the power of holistic wellness and promotes mental health in all facets of her work. She has been a vocal leader in the Black Lives Matter movement in the Bronx, participating in panels and community forums aimed at developing youth into civic leaders who will one day be able to change the systems that oppress so many in New York City. Since the onset of the pandemic, Ms. Moore remained at the forefront of advocating for mental health services for young people in the hardest hit communities. She designed a comprehensive mental health program for children and families and helped hundreds of children cope through trauma and loss during the pandemic. Ms. Moore's visionary leadership is not only inspiring, but also crucial for children and parents alike in our community and citywide. As only a person with truly authentic passion and a deep understanding of the issues affecting our kids today is capable of building the next generation of problem solvers and civic change makers. She is a true civil servant who volunteers her time and is altruistic in every sense of the word. Furthermore, her entrepreneurial spirit represents the varied range of her skills as a businesswoman, educator, nonprofit CEO, and leader, Community Board 12 member, and so on. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Robert. I hope I can live up to that bio. I appreciate you. And actually, correction, I've known you for more than 2 years. You were actually a part of our summer camp program many years ago when you were a teen. Actually, when you were a little boy. So you probably don't remember that, but it's been a lot more than 2 years. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you, Robert. I would like to welcome each and every one of you tonight to our Black History panel. We are so excited to have this conversation this evening. This is a much needed discussion that we thought it not robbery to have. And we appreciate each and every one of you for being with us tonight, for taking the time out on a Thursday evening. I know you're probably cooking or driving, or some of you at work, some of you trying to put kids to sleep or do homework, whatever it is. But we appreciate the fact that you took the time out to spend it with us tonight as we come together as a community to have this discussion. So I'm actually going to open up our discussion with a statement that I've prepared, and after which I will introduce my co-host, Leticia Stewart. So tonight, I stand not as an expert, but as a sister to 5 Black brothers, a daughter to a late Black father, and an aunt to 15 Black nephews. and as a friend and ally to hundreds of Black male counterparts. Tonight, brothers, it's all about you. We are here tonight because we want you to understand, we want to understand you. We want to understand your stories. We want to understand your pain and your triumphs. We are here because we want you to know that we are standing with you. We have been in this fight as a Black community for what feels like eternity, from the brutal and terrorizing realities of slavery, the genocide of Blacks, the violent lynchings of Black males, to the Jim Crow laws, segregation, to the crack epidemic, the mass incarceration of Black males, to police brutality, to today's negatively portrayed images of Black males as inferior, idle, and absent. We are still in the fight. The reality is that this country was founded, established, and progressed on the backs of Blacks, on the inhuman treatment of Blacks. It is a part of our history and our story. But unfortunately, for centuries, we have been excluded from the very history that we are made up of. Our story has been ignored, our pain minimized, our trauma dismissed. We have heard insensitive remarks from our counterparts like slavery is over, or get over it, or stop pulling the race card, or pull yourselves up by your bootstraps. When the reality is our collective trauma was too much for our counterparts to bear. We have sat at the table listening to the pain of other groups. We have had empathy and compassion as we have waited silently for our turn, but our turn has never came. But tonight I submit to you that our turn is now. Blacks have been controlled historically through psychological methods such as the Willie Lynch formula, which involved slave owners using psychological tactics to breaking down the mind of Blacks in order to control them. During these horrible tactics, Black men were often whipped near to death in front of their families, powerless and helpless of defending themselves. Lynchings of Black men was another form of psychological control and brutally violent, often turned into celebrations where whites would bring their entire families and even their children to watch Black men hang, and would dismember their bodies and even take them as souvenirs. This is the part of our history we conceal and we ignore. This is the most painful part of our history, and that we must talk about in order to deal with the trauma and begin our healing. We have seen time and time again the brutal acts of violence against Black males, even through Black on Black crimes. Blacks are 3 times as likely to be stopped by the police than white Americans. The biggest disparity also with Black men is that, for example, there is a huge economic and educational gap where Black men only have 90% of Black men have a bachelor's degree compared to 32% of all men. Another alarming statistic is that African-American males between the ages of 16 to 64 have a lower participation rate in the labor force compared to 79% of all males. Another alarming fact is that Black men between the ages of 16 to 64 on average earned about $11,000 less than all men. So what are we saying? We are saying that these statistics are not okay. The treatment of Black men in this country have not been okay. And it's time that we come together as a community to talk about these things and to bring these things to consciousness, to raise awareness, and to discuss solutions. Our Black males need to know that there is more to life than what they have seen. They need to know that they can truly accomplish anything. They need a community of support like all of us that's on the call, who will love, accept, celebrate, and encourage them to dream and to achieve their dreams. Our Black males need to be understood, they need to be heard, and they need to feel supported. So tonight, Black brothers, we hear you, we feel you, and we see you. So that is my statement for tonight. I am excited now to introduce my co-host, Leticia Stewart, to the screen, who will be helping me with this event tonight. She is truly a gem to me. She is my executive director, my right hand, the woman that keeps me going and that holds me up all the time. So I am super just grateful for you, Leticia. And I know that's unscripted, but I really want to make a public statement and say that she truly leads with her heart, and I think she's loved by everyone that knows her. So Leticia Stewart, again, is the executive director at I Raise Girls and Boys. She graduated from CUNY School of Professional Studies with a bachelor's degree in communications and media. While her professional career has been deeply satisfying, she is most proud of her volunteer work. For over 20 years, Ms. Stewart has been an active member of the Williamsbridge branch of the NAACP in the Bronx and has served in multiple capacities, including as a third vice president, chair of the Youth Work and Economic Development Committee, and co-chair of the College Assistance Program, and member of the Health Committee. In recognition of her dedication, she was honored by the branch with their Youth Service Award and Community Service Award. In addition to what's not on the screen, Leticia runs a number of programs through the organization, including mental health programs, youth development programs. She is a parent advocate, a fierce family advocate, and a mother to a Black teenage boy. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce Leticia Stewart.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Shaniqua. It is truly my extreme pleasure to co-host this event tonight. Thank you all for joining us this evening. As a mother, an aunt, a sister, and a cousin to numerous Black males, the importance of this discussion is not lost on me, believe me. My son is less than 2 months away from turning 18 years old. Everybody say a little prayer. And while it's exciting to see how he will progress into the next phase of his life, it also is really stressful because I know the challenges that lie before him. I am so glad that we have Black men like those serving as our panelists today to be examples for him. These men are living demonstrations of the inaccuracies at the root of stereotypes associated with Black men. And as Maya Angelou might say, they are the hopes and the dreams of the slave. And I extend a great welcome to each of them and to each of you. And I think with that, we will get our program started. I know you all are anxious to get into the discussion, but before we do that, we are going to start off our evening with the National Black Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing, sung by Mr. Brian Foster.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the glistening sky. Let it resound loud as a rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the prison has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day, God, let us march on to victory won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod felt in the day that hope unborn died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place on which our Father side. Said we have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading the path through the blood of the slaughter, out from a gloomy past, till now we stand alive where the white gleam of our star is cast. God of all weary, you're the God of our silent tears. Thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us through, yeah. Oh, keep us forever, oh, in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath, Lord, your wing, may we forever stand true to you, oh God, true to our native land.
That was amazing, amazing. What a fantastic voice. As you can see, there is so much talent in the Black community, is there not? And so with that, we are actually going to get into our community agreement. So this community agreement applies to each and every one of us that are joining today, and it's based upon the principles of collaboration and togetherness. So the community agreement: in the spirit of community and understanding, we willingly agree to participate in this open forum. We agree to refrain from judgment. We agree to refrain from ridicule. We agree to refrain from any action or speech that would ultimately divide our community. Instead, we agree to respect every individual's right to their opinion, allowing them the time and space to voice those opinions. We agree to broaden our view to enable us to see situations from the perspective of others. We agree to communicate effectively, which includes active listening and sharing experiences. Through effective communication, we can stand tall in our spoken truth and affect healing and change for current and future generations as a collective. And with our community agreement, which hopefully everyone agrees with, we want to make sure that we are now welcoming our panel.
Thank you so much, Leticia, for that. So we are actually going to have Councilmember Kevin Riley come forward with his statement. Unfortunately, he has a lot of other things that he's doing tonight. And so he was gracious enough to bless us with his presence. And we're so thankful to have him. He actually represents us, Leticia and I, in our hometown, District 12. He is a young Black man doing amazing work in District 12, who has two daughters, beautiful daughters, and I know has his hands full. So we want to allow him the opportunity to come forward and to just bless us with any words that he'd like to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Moore. And I just want to really extend my gratitude to you and Ms. Stewart for everything that you've been doing for our community. Councilmember Kevin Riley, and this is an amazing event because usually when we talk about Black men, they're never celebrated or even recognized in a positive manner. And it's very challenging to be a Black American in the United States of America, especially a Black man and a Black woman at that. A few years ago, we were able to start an organization. I think my most prized possession, my most happiest accomplishment that I have done in my life is become a father. I always bring up the story because it's always important. If you don't share your story, others won't know that they can get to sticky situations or horrible situations or trauma. I lost my father to the criminal justice system when I was younger. And fast forwarding, when I got older, I became a father in 2015 to a beautiful young girl named Brooke Victoria Riley. But I was so confused and it was very challenging, but I know that I wanted to make sure that I was with her every single day, every single minute of the life. So what happened is I was up in Albany because I used to work with Speaker Hasty. And at that time, I used to post pictures of my daughters all the time. And then after I had another daughter, Kate Riley, in 2019, I remember going up to Albany. Someone asked me if they had the same mother. It was a very random question, but it was kind of disheartening and disrespectful at the same time, because that was the first thing that that person had asked me. Rewinding before that, the founder of an organization that we started called the Dad Game, Sean Williams, was at the supermarket and was asked the same question, and also told, "We're so thankful that you were a part of your children's lives." And I think when we're thinking about Black fatherhood, we know that Black fathers are a part of their children's lives. So we formed a nationwide organization called the Dad Gang. And the Dad Gang was really focused on dispelling the myth that Black men are not a part of their children's lives. And I'm so sorry, I'm at an event right now, so the background's kind of noisy. So if you can't hear me, I apologize for that. But Ms. Moore, I really truly want to thank you because this is an exceptional event, because we want to make sure that we're giving Black men a safe space to kind of express the trauma that they've been through to help other young Black boys. And I'm going to have my hands filled a little bit more because me and my wonderful wife are expecting a new baby. We find out the sex tomorrow, so she's hoping for a boy, but we're both hoping for a healthy baby. But I just love being a father. I love being a Black man. I love being your elected official. And once again, I want to extend my apologies for not being able to stay on the entire session. And I truly want to give my gratitude and appreciation to Ms. Moore and Ms. Stewart. Thank you so much, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Council Member. That first of all, congratulations to you and your wife. We are so excited to have another baby in our community. So please send us pictures.
Right. Look, we know they will be as adorable
as soon as I find
the
out.
two.
As soon as I find out, you all will know. Trust and believe.
That's awesome. Council Member, we
Thank you,
appreciate
everyone.
you so much.
Thank
You for blessing us with those words. We'll send you the recording. Hopefully you'll be able to watch it later on. Thank you for taking the moment and opportunity to be with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. So we are going to move forward with the bios of the rest of our panelists. We are going to start with Mr. Hugh Campbell. And let me also mention that this event is being co-sponsored by the National Council of Negro Women North Bronx section. And I do want to give a shout out to our Madam President, Carmina, who I believe is on the line. Also want to give a shout out to one of our funders, New York Community Trust. I do see our lovely Mr. Roderick Jenkins. Thank you so much for being with us. You know, we love you, and thank you for showing your support to us. I also want to give a shout out to Toba. He is the president of the 47th Precinct Council and District 12 in the North Bronx. So we are so excited to have you. Thank you so much. And also want to give a special shout out and recognition to Abraham Jones, who is the executive director of the Claremont Neighborhood Center down in the South Bronx. So thank you all so much for being with us. We appreciate you. Also want to give a shout out to Cheryl, excuse me. I believe she's from NAACP as the education director. Is that correct, Leticia? That's your
yes, the NAACP Early Childhood Education Center.
There we go.
The executive director there.
Thank you so much for being with us. Awesome. So, and also Donna, I want to give a shout out to you. Also a member of NCNW and does amazing community work up in the Bronx. So thank you so much for being with us. So without further ado, we are going to introduce our amazing panelists, starting with Mr. Hugh Campbell, and then Mr. Kenton, and then Dr. Hart.
So Hugh Campbell is a graduate of Boston College and Hofstra University School of Law. He practices in the area of general civil litigation with an emphasis on personal injuries, real estate, wills, estates, and probate. He serves as counsel to the public administrator of Bronx County and serves as a member of the board of directors of the Business Initiative Corporation of New York. Mr. Campbell is a past president of the New York State Trial Lawyers Association, the largest specialty bar association in the state, dedicated to representing the rights of personal injury victims. We welcome you, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you for that introduction and good evening.
Thank you. Let's have Mr. Kenton's bio now to the screen. Oh, awesome. Leticia, can you read that?
So Mr. Kenton Kirby is the Men's Empowerment Coordinator for Make It Happen. Kenton is a native New Yorker who firmly believes in the strength of community and the tremendous benefits that come with interdisciplinary collaboration. Make It Happen is geared towards providing supportive victim services to young men of color, historically an underserved population due to gender roles and societal expectations of manhood. This program aims to challenge and educate its members and outside service providers of the profound long-term impacts trauma has on individuals, regardless of gender or race. We thank you for being with us this evening, Mr. Kenton Kirby.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Awesome. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Lou Hart. Dr. Lou Hart is an inaugural medical doctor of the health equity for Yale New Haven Health System. His mission in YNHHS Office of Health Equity is to eliminate unjust racial and social barriers that contribute to devastating health disparities for patients by proactively identifying and working to eliminate institutional bias, structural racism, and social impediments to health. Dr. Hart envisions a system that is more just, resilient, data-informed, and accountable, and providing high-quality, safe, and equitable care to every patient, every time. Thank you so much, Dr. Hart, for being with us.
My goodness, thank you so much. I am so excited to be in such good company and so excited for tonight.
Thank you. Awesome. So we're going to get started. We're going to give each of our panelists 1 minute to introduce themselves, starting with Mr. Campbell, then Mr. Kirby, and then Dr. Hart.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me on this panel. And I just want to say congratulations to all the other panelists who are here today, because I think this is something which is extremely fitting and extremely important for Black History Month. As you heard, I'm a practicing attorney, and actually I've been practicing for 39 years, and I've actually been in this particular location in the Bronx for 38 of those 39 years, and I've been in the Bronx for 39 years practicing. So I've actually interacted with a number of people, and I think that this is a fitting topic regarding the leadership that we need for Black males to move in the right direction, because we have an enormous amount of potential. And I think that all we need is some nurturing, as we have from this organization. And I just want to say, as we assemble today, I always want to give credit to the other organization, the sister organization, because I always want to say in the North Bronx, if you're a member of one organization, you're basically a member of all the organizations, because you see the same people at the NAACP, at the NCNW, at the Community, the Block Association. And I think that's what makes the North Bronx so strong and so unique. And that's what makes us, a very, very good community as a whole. So I just want to say that, we do have potential. And that's one of the things that I always like to preach, is that, we have potential and we should exercise our potential and basically live up to the potential that we have. So that being said, I'm going to really listen and try to answer some of the questions that are being asked, but I think this is extremely, extremely important. And one of the things I just want to share, because normally when I speak to students and I speak to young men, young women too, I always start off with one question to them. I say, are you a leader or a follower? And I said, all the leaders come on this side and all the followers go on that side. And normally what that does is starts the discussion, because everyone will start looking around to see who is a leader and who is a follower. And you will be surprised how frequently the ones who did not know which position they held will move to the leadership position. And I'm hoping by doing that, you can inspire someone to become a leader. So that being said, I just want to say I'm happy to be here.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kenton Kirby. My current role, actually, I'm the director of practice at the Center for Code Innovation. One of the roles I did was running that Make It Happen program, which was a very, very transformative time in my career. I've been in the work, I'm a social worker in the social services game for about close to 20 years in a number of roles throughout the 5 boroughs. I would say the lessons I've learned that brought me here is how systems have caused harm, and being a Black man from New York with different power differentials and across different roles across my career, I had to acknowledge what kind of harm I also performed myself, right? Working for ACS, child welfare, working in substance abuse treatment. So I had to really look back and take a honest look at how was I performing, how was I acting out in my community? Was I actually fulfilling was I really doing healing work with folks, or was I really just kind of keeping things as they were, right? And when I had that opportunity working at Make It Happen program, I really was able to focus on the healing and giving young Black and brown men an opportunity to get support just for the sake of getting support, not because it was tethered to any sort of punishment. And I think that is something that I've prided myself on. It really shifted how I've done my own work. Professionally, personally, I'm a brother. I'm a younger brother. I'm the son of my parents who passed away when I was very young. So I also have my own lived experiences of navigating these systems in different nuanced ways. And I always say what drives me every day is to pay it forward, because I can't pay it backwards. So I'll stop there. Thank you so much for having me here.
It's going to be difficult to try to fill the shoes of these 2 great men, but I'm going to sure give it a try. It's such a pleasure to be with you all tonight. And as we continue to celebrate Black excellence this month and every month, it's such a great reason that gets us together here in this space to have this conversation. I think we have such the unique privilege tonight to talk about what things, I think too many of us aren't familiar with the things in the past that have led us to where we are now. But I'm always the consummate optimist, and I think about all of these opportunities that lie ahead of us to really paint what tomorrow looks like and how we can really flip the script here. The narrative that the history books have framed is not the only perspective. It is one perspective, and it is my opinion that is a flawed perspective. We need to flip the script. We cannot continue to go on this mindset of, Black men or Black communities are just victims, that they are just helpless. They can't help themselves, and everyone's out to get them. And the only way they can, accomplish is to be saved. We don't need saviors. We need believers. We need a country that's going to hold itself accountable to live up to its tenets of one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I mean, these are things that all of us espouse out of our country and what makes us the best country that ever has been, but we have not lived up to that expectation of where I see us. So I think, as we come together and hear so many brilliant minds think about new and innovative ways that we can frame this narrative going forward, I think our collective, pen stroke is getting darker and deeper in terms of we will be able to leave a lasting impact. And a lot of the haunted decisions of our past that we continue to see as modern day consequences today, we can start to change that narrative and frame these as opportunities that have made us stronger, more resilient, more enriched with love, and opportunities to use that same passion to paint such a brighter future for all of us tomorrow. Like we always say, there's way too much talent that's being left on the field. And some of the statistics we'll be discussing tonight, when we leave communities behind, especially large groups like the Black community or Black males in America, that is way too much talent being left on the field, to use a sports metaphor. So we demand better, we deserve better, and we will get there together. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hart, Mr. Kirby, and Mr. Campbell. We are going to get started with our first question, and that will be read by Leticia Stewart.
And I just also wanted to add so that there will be a Q&A portion at the end of the panel. So if, as we're going along, you have any questions for our panelists, feel free to put that into the Q&A, and we'll try to get to your questions toward the end. But as of right now, for our panelists, we want to start out with this. Can you tell us a time when you first realized you were a Black male? What is your earliest recollection? And how did this experience influence your perspective of what it means to be a Black man in America? And anyone can start out with that. Perhaps Mr. Campbell?
Oh, okay. I can say from day one, I don't think there's ever been a question as to who I am. Just, from home, out into the community, that's something that I've always admired, because I always, heard in the house that, we are from a special stock, that we have greatness in us. And, and I think what it means is that, no matter how many challenges you get, as an individual, we have to define ourselves. And I think once we define ourselves, then I think the rest will follow. But we should never let other folks define us. And I think too often we let someone tell us who we are, and then we get distracted. But no, I've never had any question as to who I was. And no matter how many times I get challenged, I always stayed focused and realized who I was and who I was accountable to. And I think that becomes very important.
I think for me, I really wrestled with this question because there were moments where I was reminded that I was Black in different ways. But I think I feel like it was how others define my Blackness, right? I grew up in a home with a Caribbean family. My mother's from Jamaica, but my parents died when I was very young. So those first 5 years of my life, I was preying on love. I was loved on, and my Blackness was not looked in any way of just like my humanity, and I'm precious as a 5-year-old. But then after that moment, then I started getting those reminders of like, oh, I'm at a candy store and I have 15 cents to buy candy, and the merchant thinks I stole something, and then they get the police to come and scare me that they're going to arrest me. I'm getting that message at 6, 7 years old. So I'm like, okay, what is this message? But I also knew something else wasn't right, because I had those first couple years with this intact family really kind of lifting up my Blackness. So I always looked at it as, you can remind me how you perceive me and my Blackness, but I knew who I was, and that wasn't going to shift it. No matter different settings I worked in, I was usually the only or one of few Black men in school settings, in professional settings, and I always knew that I had to work harder and show more, because that was how you perceive me. But I know that I was worthy to be in that space. Mm-hmm. But you didn't see it, and it didn't have to matter to me.
I mean, I agree with so much of what has been said, and I think there's so many brilliant things that have been shared with us. I'm in a similar boat where, there have been so many times in life that I have been reminded of how the world sees me, regardless of how I see myself. Like eyes closed, If no one ever told me I was Black, I wouldn't know I was until people put that on me and the baggage that that carried in this country. You know, I grew up, I'm biracial. My mother's family is from Norway, very fair skin, blonde hair. I grew up in a household in Canada where all my cousins on her side of the family were fair skinned, white. I didn't think anything of it. It wasn't until people started asking my mom, is he adopted? Are you adopted? And the worst part, she told me this was a story when she was breastfeeding me. And she goes, yeah, I just found this kid. I asked him on the ground if he was hungry. He didn't really speak much English. He was a baby. So I just put him on the breast and I started lactating. Like the ignorance, the sheer ignorance that exists in people's minds. And I remember when I'm moving to New York, I think in Canada, being biracial, being Black, it's not too much for cause for concern. It's a very different experience. I grew up, my pediatrician was a Jamaican immigrant. I had role models who were Black men. It was just a different dynamic because we don't have a lot of that heritage in terms of that, I should say that traumatized past in Canada's history. But when I moved back to America at 11 years old, I got it front and center. I remember playing basketball in the park, and people would be, what are you? What is you? They would say in New York, and I'd be like, I'm Canadian. And they're like, oh, so you're Dominican? And I'm like, I don't think so. Do you speak Spanish? I'm like, no, I speak French. Like, oh, you're Haitian. And I go, I really don't think so. I'm Canadian. I'm Black. I'm Norwegian. Oh, you're Black. Okay. And I asked them, why does that matter? And they go, well, I wanted to know what you are so I can understand you a little bit better. And I'm like, why don't you just ask me who I am? Why don't you get to know me as opposed to try to find some big stereotype? What are you, Jewish? You Italian? You Catholic? Like, what does that have anything to do? I don't represent everybody in a community. I just represent myself. So let's stop this stereotyping game. And unfortunately, this continues to go on today. You know, I'm a physician up here at Yale New Haven Health, and I wear a white coat. I have a stethoscope. I'm wearing scrubs, and people will still ask me if I'm the nurse or the respiratory therapist, because this is the notion, and not that those aren't more valiant or just as brilliant professions, because they are. We're all part of the same treatment team. But the idea that like the young Black man can't be a doctor, like that doesn't exist in America. These are the narratives, and these are the things that we've been conditioned to in a society that we need to break. This mold that it's so much easier to imagine me dribbling a basketball than doing something else in a professional setting is just unacceptable for someone's preconceived notion. So I do not represent the monolithic whole. I do not represent the Black community, just like neither of my two colleagues on the panel. We represent ourselves, but we are a part of this very vibrant community. And I think it's just so important that we explain that all of the things we're going to share are our own unique perspectives. But I think these opportunities to platform these perspectives of individuals who have worked really hard and who are in positions to be able to lift the next generation up, that's the true opportunity we have and the true privilege that we have on our hands tonight.
Thank you so much for that, all of you. And Dr. Hart said a number of things that just stuck with me. One of it was the baggage that it essentially associated with being a Black male. So it's the baggage that you didn't ask for, that you were essentially born into, the baggage that was put on you. You didn't pick up that bag and say, hey, I want to walk around with a bag because I'm a Black male. That bag was thrown on you. And here you find yourself just carrying it. And you got to put it down when you realize that it was never yours in the first place. So I think that's so important. When you say things like, regardless of knowing who I am, I'm being told by other people, this is who you are. That's something that we want to dispel a little more tonight. And we're going to dive deeper. But first, we're going to show a quick video that was sent to us by Mr. Dr. Hart. So let's cue up that video. We'll jump right back into our panel.
Family to do if they can't afford to enroll their kids in private dance or music classes or what have you. After school programs are being cut as well. What are families to do if they can't afford it?
I wanted to tell the story of how I started my nonprofit organization. In 2013, I founded it just as a need for the community to have a program that
looks like, Kristen, you have the wrong video. The video that you should be playing is the video of Black boys. If you check the show run, you'll see the correct video. Apologize everyone for that. Thank you for your patience.
started. They're just asking for dignity, which you would think all of us would want.
James Baldwin said to be a Negro in this country and to be relatively conscious means that you are enraged almost all the time.
You realize you live in a world where your humanity is constantly being questioned.
This country needs to put the mirror up.
We're angry because of the notion that we love our community. We love our Black boys and our Black girls.
These young people don't need saviors, they need believers.
We're passing this stuff on from generation to generation.
We're better than what Black people and Black males are experiencing. We are better than that.
Thank you so much. And so we want to jump into some specific questions for you, Dr. Hart, and that commercial in itself was very powerful, really speaking to some of the things that you mentioned, that we don't need saviors, we need believers. We need people to believe in us. We need people to believe in our boys. We need people to believe in our Black males. So my question to you, Dr. Hart, I know that you are a pediatrician within Yale University. And I think this was mentioned before in terms of Black males not necessarily being represented as physicians or being underrepresented in these professions. I believe that the percentage right now of Black male physicians is about 2%, which is extremely alarming and absolutely not okay. But can you tell us, Dr. Hart, as a Black male pediatrician, do you believe that it is difficult for Black boys to see themselves growing up as doctors? And how do we teach our Black males to use their hands to be other professions where they're underrepresented, such as in medicine? So that's a twofold question. I'll ask it one more time. As a Black male pediatrician, do you believe that it is difficult for Black boys to see themselves growing up as doctors? And then as the second follow-up question, how do we teach our Black males how to use their hands to be other professions other than athletes, such as in medicine?
Yeah, I mean, you shared a very scary statistic. The fact that there are more Black males in medical school in the mid-1970s than there are today, or at least there were last year. These statistics are chilling, and that's one of just many. I mean, I think of the Fortune 500 CEOs, 4 of them are Black, which represents less than 1%. If we think of like US senators that have been African-American in our country, I believe there have been 11 in 233 years. There were the same amount in the late 1800s as there were in 2010. So, so much of this is you can't be what you can't see. And when we are creating these, or lack thereof, opportunities for the youth to see themselves in these roles and to highlight, to platform that there are so many other ways to make a living beyond just dribbling a ball or writing some lyrics, because this is what the media or the culture will have you believe, that that's what Black males do. And it couldn't be further from the truth. When we think about becoming a professional athlete, we think of how few actually make it there. We're talking like the 1% of the 1%. So that represents such a small group that no way represents what most Black males do. Most Black males in this country are by no means doing that. So the idea is, well, how can we start showing our youth other opportunities? And it really is, it's a colleague of mine, Dr. Dale, who's involved in a group, and he says, you can't be what you can't see. So these things have to start early. Oftentimes people look and say, why aren't we, ingraining, why aren't we training the next generation? Well, it doesn't start in high school or in college. We've missed so many opportune years to teach 3, 4, kindergartners and grade school children that there are so many other things they can be. But at the end of the day, what we do now is we say, oh, these people are from disadvantaged communities. Not these people are from resilient communities. We say these people are from marginalized, neighborhoods. No, they're from strong neighborhoods that have a lot of conviction and a lot of love. These are minorities. No, they've been minoritized. They were not a minority until you made them feel like one. So there's so much that needs to go into how we use our words and how we frame this narrative so that we can start to be more positive and stop just saying, everyone's out to get you. The man is out to get you and there's nothing you can do. You're a victim. You're almost infantilized. You're made to feel like a kid because, the whole system's out against you. And yes, historically, every system is perfectly designed to produce the outcomes that it does. So when we look at America, and we look at where we are now, everything had to happen in our past the way it did for us to get where we are now. So it was perfectly designed to produce this. I think we've all realized that this is not where we want to be. And more of us in our country are realizing that every day. For too many of us on the call tonight, we've known this history for a long time and this reality, but more and more are coming around to it every day. And the idea is, well, what do we do going forward? And I think it's just the unique opportunity to show the youth that there are so many brilliant minds out there of all race and ethnicities. But in this Black community, you'll see a few tonight that I'm happy just to be considered as a part of my esteemed colleagues tonight. But you're going to see that there are so many unique opportunities for us to rise above this. And the scary thing in medicine is that, being Black in this country has not always been a good thing. And if anything, has actually led to massive disparities as we see in healthcare through the utilization of our healthcare system and the treatment you get. I mean, just last year, we analyzed statistics that said the maternal mortality gap has increased by 20%. So, and of that, Black women still remain at 3 times higher the likelihood of dying, or Black birthing persons of dying during pregnancy or just thereafter. The idea that what doctors write in our medical notes, we actually propagate bias by sharing things and our opinions of people because of how we've been conditioned. If a patient is maybe not taking a medication, we call them non-adherent or not compliant. Not the patient had difficulties, the patient had barriers that made it harder for them. Why don't we take that type of a mentality? Because then when the next physician reads that and go, this patient was non-compliant, we assume, oh, this patient doesn't really care. So why would I go ahead and go the extra mile to help this person? So we just propagate bias in our medical records. And there are great studies that show when bias is propagated, when you prime people with a negative word, they're actually much less likely to treat a person who's in pain with the same level of medication if you give that same chart to somebody, a fellow doctor, and ask them, what pain medication would you give this person? It was a scary statistic that showed this. There was a recent study that just came out that showed that black men, but Black patients in healthcare at this system in Chicago were 2.5 times more likely to have negative descriptors in their charts against white patients compared to white patients when we controlled for age, we controlled for socioeconomic status in terms of patients were living in the same communities, they were coming in with the same diseases, but yet they were 2.5 times more likely to have negative descriptors. So how much, like chicken or the egg, how much is it that like 2.5 times Black people are just always more negative? Or is it that a perception of that negativity ends up fulfilling that prophecy? We have these preconceived notions. And I think so much of this is like historical racism and really bad explicit things. Like just one generation ago, my dad was born in 1955. That was the year Emmett Till was lynched. That's a lot of trauma and bag. When he was 13, MLK was assassinated. Like that's just so different than my experience in America. But that's trauma that he lived with and that he bequeathed a little bit that to me. But my experience in this country is going to be a little bit different. And the types of stories that I'm going to tell my children might be sheltered a little bit from some of the terrible atrocities that happened one generation ago. Let's not even go further back. So the idea that this historical, really ugly, explicit racism has got us to where we are now. And yet everyone wants to say it's over, but it's led to bias because all those things from the past that everyone says was really ugly, we now kind of believe they're normal. We've talked about this before, where we treat people's kidneys different if they're Black versus if they're not Black. These antiquated ideas that Black bodies are biologically different, that they have less nerve endings, that they have thicker skin. I have a professor at Yale that is getting under a little bit of fire right now. He was teaching his residents that Black skin was thicker, thus needed less stitches. And I asked, where did you come up with this? Well, this is just a fact. You know this. Find me a study that makes this a fact. It's just fallacious. But it's scary how so much of this stuff has crept in and we now actually just kind of humbly accept it. So for too many years, it's all of our faults. I hold all of us responsible and call us all in to this together because we've all allowed this to happen around us. And I don't want to take power away from this very same communities that have so much of it, who just haven't realized how much they have. So, so much to share, so much to excite about. But I think, when we're talking about how we were going to change the game for young Black males, but all Americans, but especially young Black males, it's really to change this framework. And like someone wrote in the comments, from a deficit base to an asset base. Talk about all the positive things they have and show them how it would be so cool to use those positive things to go off and be an astronaut, to go and be an engineer and build a bridge, to go and be a doctor and open little babies' hearts and cure them. Those are the exciting opportunities but we need others to believe in us, but most importantly, we need to believe in us. And we need to make sure that we are not our own worst enemies by not going for that job, by not applying for an opportunity when we don't have all of the criteria. The worst they can say is no. The status quo is all you have to lose. And if you lose the status quo, it's because you mean you're on the next level and you have a new possibility in your hands. So hope I answered the question right, but there's just so much excitement, and it's all about these stories and how we tell them to the next generation. That's what's going to excite them. If we tell them more of the same, we might just get more of the same.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to jump in to acknowledge all of the great comments that are in the chat. I mean, we do have one question in the Q&A that I'll jump into, but to the panelists, you've been getting some really great feedback from the audience, thanking you for your wisdom and also being a powerful representation of a Black male role model. So I just wanted to address that. Also, we have a few comments, one from Melissa Gray. She stated that the psychological impact of the transatlantic slave trade has devastated us all. I thought that was very powerful. And also Nicole Anthony, she stated a statistic that there are only 2% of Black male public school teachers. So to your point about representation, and I think you mentioned the comment about asset-based versus deficient mindset. So I just wanted to address those comments briefly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alicia. And certainly Dr. Hart, so much to talk about, and just so much in terms of the wisdom that you're bringing to the table, talking about I think you had mentioned in a prior panel we did together, racial algorithms that were essentially done in the medical field. Not quite sure how much you wanted to share on that, but I think it's worth raising awareness on some of those things. So if you don't mind speaking a little to that, to what it looks like for a Black person to receive medical treatment and how that treatment may look different from our other counterparts.
So, I mean, let's set the tone with the idea that Black men have the lowest life expectancy of any social group in this country. So there's just known cold cut fact. And this is by no accident, because this is not something that is shared with Black men in other countries. It's something unique about these United States that makes it that way. And when we look at, even 2 years ago in the medical literature, there was a really groundbreaking paper that came out that described 15 clinical algorithms. And these are like calculators or things that are built into our decision tools, like what pops up on our screen that would trigger us to maybe offer a test or not, that take race into account. So just let me talk you through this. So let's say one patient comes in and the doctor looks at them and they look like they have light skin. So they write white into the chart for the demographic. That equation will calculate when that patient comes in a year later and has a blood test and it shows, your kidney function is slowing down a little bit. Since we've used this equation and we think you're white, this actually says that, maybe we should start you on a medication, or maybe we should refer you to see one of our kidney specialists because your kidney's not functioning where we would like it to be. Flip the script. That same patient now comes in, or the patient's twin who happens to have a really nice tan, and they say, wow, that patient looks Black. I'm just going to document Black into the chart and not really thinking too much of it. But now that patient comes back 2 years later, same situation, same kidney function, that if the patient was white would have actually triggered a referral to see a kidney specialist to get more medication. Because the patient was identified as Black, the system actually says, well, it's actually normal for a Black person's kidney to be that sick. It's actually, that's what the data shows. The data shows that Black people are on average sicker. So it's actually normal for the Black patient to have that level of kidney function. So they don't need to see any doctor. They're right where we expect them to be. That's disgusting. What we've created through we've created biological consequences from how we've ordered our social groups. We've subjected a group to slavery and the brutality of Jim Crow and mass incarceration, which is Jim Crow 2.0. And then we said, wow, well, we treated these two groups differently, but everything's good now. But look, this one group still does worse off. It must be biologic. It must be something that's in their body. And, we don't really understand why. It couldn't have been anything that the history has done, but it must be something that's just inherent. So we should just create equations that risk adjust that away. So what we're doing is we are normalizing sickness in Black bodies and treating, that is one example. There are 14 other clinical algorithms that say if you're white, your kidney stone risk is different. This is all made up. And the scary thing is, this is widely held and widely believed. And most people really feel powerless to change anything. Well, we're actually doing that in the New York City Health and Hospitals public hospital system or healthcare system for New York City. We eliminated the top 3 racial algorithms in our system. And up here at Yale, we're doing the same thing. But unfortunately, there's not enough leaders who are really strongly willed to do this work because it's just what we've been doing for so long. The last chilling statistic in 2 minutes, I'm going to explain. So lung function. And a lot of us are going to talk about this, with COVID and with patients who are battling asthma and patients who are battling a lot of, chronic lung disease. The equations that we use today offer the same difference in calculation between Black and white patients as the philosophical ideas of Thomas Jefferson and of plantation physicians over 200 years ago. They did tests on slaves, comparing slaves to the owners, and said, slaves' lungs are about 10 to 15% less, they can blow 10 to 15% less air, let's say that. And for some reason, this was just accepted. And we've now, 200 years later, still use that same risk adjustment. It's terrifying. This doesn't take into account whether someone's multiracial, where someone lives, because we all know your lungs are all related to what kind of things you're breathing in. If you live next to an inner city highway, you're more likely to breathe in toxins. If you were born premature, those are the things that predict lung function, not your race. But in this country, we've made race so closely linear with poverty, so closely linear in terms of being so similar with where you live. Residential segregation, redlining, if you have insurance or not, what types of jobs you're going to have. So we've almost, like the master's plan, we've almost perfectly designed a system to keep someone down and to act like we had no idea what we were doing. And then when everything was supposedly made fair, we have done so many, this social conditioning to one group that it actually led to biological consequences. And now we're using that as justification to say, well, see, they were different in the first place. They're like from a different species, these Black people. That's why we should treat them differently. And you hear doctors say this, and they don't even realize they're saying it like that, but they're saying, yeah, of course we need a different equation for them. They're different. There's only one race, the human race. Let's not forget that. But when we continue to believe in biological racism, things that are 200 plus years old, we don't even realize that we're all propagating this, healthcare included.
That is so well said. And there are so many comments and the chat box that are just blowing up. Thanking you, Dr. Hart, just for bringing that to our awareness. It is extremely scary to hear that and to know that there are racial algorithms that we are subjected to, that we are unaware of, that have been in existence in this country for many years. And it's really scary to know that some of these algorithms happened 200 years ago, and we're still using them to determine care. I mean, so much has changed over 2 years in terms of science and has evolved, but we're still using the same. That to me is absurd, absurd. So I'm just wondering what, and we can talk about this later on, what are some solutions to really dispelling these things, and to what are some ways that we can, as a community, raise awareness on these issues that you've mentioned and healthcare. I think this is one of the largest topics right now, especially because we're still in the pandemic and we have seen so many of our Blacks with underlying conditions die. And it's like, oh, it's acceptable because they were poor. That's not acceptable. why are there underlying conditions with Blacks? Because like you mentioned, they are not getting quality care. They're not getting the same level of care. And so there's so much more that we need to talk about on this topic. But I do want to give Mr. Kenton an opportunity to talk about the same issue, but just in terms of mental health. So we know, Mr. Kenton, that you are a licensed clinical social worker, and mental health is something that we know is extremely important. And many times in the Black community, it is stigmatized for many reasons, and sometimes for many good reasons. But I want you to tell us, Mr. Kenton, in your opinion as a Black therapist, what do you believe? Where do these stigmas come from in terms of Black males or just Blacks in general not seeking out treatment? And what are some ways in your work that you have seen this? How have you seen this in your work? Excuse me.
Okay, so the short answer is there's a lack of trust, and it's justified mistrust, right? To speak to a lot of this, to everything Dr. Hart was talking about, biological racism, same thing with mental health. And if we think about the foundations of a lot of these things in this country, think about the foundation of medicine, think about the foundations of mental health, policing in this country, there's racism that's integrated into all of that, right? From the slave patrols, and now is the foundation of our law enforcement. Mental health was, we were doing lobotomies, and we were saying these folks were manic, and these folks, there's madness here, there's this, right? So there is a othering of people in a lot of the work that we do. And specifically with mental health, a lot of the delivery of mental health services in our community has always been tethered to a punishment. A young Black man angry about something in school pushes a chair and it hits someone, and they're like, oh, well, he's oppositional defiant, he needs to see a counselor. But no one asks why he did it. What's going on? No one peels back the layers. So everything that we've done in our mental health world has been about social control. You don't act in a way that we're cool with, we're okay with. So there's something wrong with you, and there's no real space for understanding. So many of and some of the same language is used in our system, right? Non-compliant with treatment. They're compliant because they're saying yes to everything. They're not challenging us. They were oppositional in session. You're talking about their life. You're not, there's a perceived hierarchy, and we are standing on that hierarchy as practitioners. So for us to really kind of build trust and really kind of start thinking about this work in a way we're let's talk about young Black men, an opportunity for healing. It has to be specifically for healing's sake, not because you are wrong or you're bad or you're less than. You have experienced some things. How do we sit there? And I always wonder in my work over the years, every time I've been working with young men, a young man is referred to me. The first thing people go to is this young man needs a job. He needs this. He needs this concrete thing. Which goes to why we immediately socializing our men's value with, oh, they have to have a job, they have to be this. Why can't healing just be a sense of healing? You're having night terrors. You know what? You got shot at. It is totally normal that you're going to have some night issues falling asleep. You're going to have some issues here. And I don't need to talk to you about getting a job or getting all this other stuff, because other folks who have access and resources and can shop around what therapists that they want to go and see, they're not stuck with someone who says, well, you have to come here, and if you don't come here, it's going to be a condition. It's a condition of your program to be a part of here. Because how we view mental health services in communities of color, it's the carrot or the stick. Come get this help, and if you don't get this help, here's this big old stick that's going to come down on you, and that is going to be the criminal justice, the criminal legal system. We're going to medicate you. We're going to diagnose you, and those diagnoses, it's a bad game of telephone. So then it's like, I get this diagnosis, and then the next person gets it and has this interpretation of it, and everyone else around me everyone in all the systems sees all of my evaluations and can spin their own narratives. So for us to really provide opportunities for healing, there's a lot of undoing that needs to be done. And there also has to be a lot more, and we always say the term, we're helping. Helping is saying, I'm better than you and I know what's best for you. We are here in service. And if we're going to be here in service, this is a collective thing, because I truly understand, you know your life experience better than I will. So I need to actually humble myself as a practitioner. And many of our places, we are not positioned in that way. So that's in short. I can probably talk forever about this, but very similar to what Dr. Hart was saying around like the racism that's just integrated into our systems. There's studies that show these things, same thing. So I'll stop there.
That content was just completely blew my mind, and the chat box is blowing up with comments and praise for just what you said. I mean, so well articulated. I am both excited and furious because of what you know, the social control that we mask and we package and say we're helping, when in reality we're not. It's another form of control. It really is. And then sometimes I think we had this conversation. I'm also a social worker. Sometimes we're complicit in the oppression. And if we're not careful, if we don't take a step back, we will realize that we're a part of the social control. And so it's important, and it's you know, commendable that you, as a Black male licensed clinical therapist, you understand what's going on. You see, you're able to peel back the layers, and I'm hoping that you can teach other counterparts in our profession to do the same. It's really important. And to that, I know we're running out of time so fast. This discussion is so amazing. I don't want to stop, but I also want to be respectful of time. I do have another question for you, Mr. Kirby. You talked about, you know, the fact that males, Black males don't get an opportunity to have a space to find healing, that when they are and when they come from mental health treatment, they're often criminalized and punished versus provided with an opportunity to actually heal. Tell me, what do you believe it looks like for Black males to have a space and mental health, if they did have that space in mental health, to actually be to actually work through stress and race-related trauma? What would that look like, in your opinion?
So, I mean, I can speak to some of the work I was doing in the Make It Happen program. So for about 5-6 years, I was working alongside a violence prevention program in Brooklyn called Save Our Streets. And this is a cure violence replication from Chicago, where you hire folks who have their own lived experiences and close to the issue around gun violence to interrupt conflicts so they don't escalate to gun violence. My job was to be the clinician, the in-house therapist. So I had to really undo a lot of the stuff that I was trained in, right? And even undoing some of the language. And even thinking about understanding that I have to come in with understanding that I need to build the trust. And that means that you may not show up because you're testing me. You're testing to see if I'm going to show up and be consistent. And I knew that I had to reckon that for my profession and that person's experience with my field. So there was a certain level of responsibility I had to take on that, right? And things that most folks would be like, oh, they're not ready for treatment. They're not ready for services. Maybe they're not ready for service because you're the 15th person that said they had the help. Maybe it's the same script that I've heard that young person's heard since they were 6-7 years old, and they've had 25 folks come in and saying they're going to help. So I show up, and if you're not ready, okay, I'm here when you need it. So that it's counter to how we measure success, right? It's how many people we have coming through. Do we have those numbers coming through the doors? Because that impacts, funding streams. And I'm like, well, how many people come through the door and stay? How many people come through the door and actually are able to negotiate mental health services that they get with me, just like any other folks that have resources that can go into therapy and come out when they want. If they want to go back in and get a tune-up, I worked with a young man for a year and a half. And it took me 3 or 4 months to get him to start coming consistently. Year and a half to work with me, decided, I want to try this out on my own. He was good for 6 months. Something happened to him. And he got arrested. First person he called was his partner. He said, call Kenton, I need help. I hadn't heard from him in 6 months. But he knew that year and a half time he had with me was that he knew that he can always come back. So creating that space just for someone to come through, not because it was tethered to punishment or anything like that. And then you have to also have an eye to advocacy in this work, to like do the services, but also know that you're working with folks that are tethered in this really messed up system. And I need to use my knowledge and how to navigate it to help these young folks through it. Like I remember in a situation where we were in court with another client and they gave him a plea, they gave him an offer that really blew him, really freaked him out. He was having a panic attack. But everyone else was going to look at him saying, oh, he's being difficult. They were going to have the court officers come and probably take him out. I pulled him aside, brought him out the side of the courtroom. We sat by the windows and we did some breathing exercise to bring him down. But if he wasn't there, if that panic attack would have been looked at as him being oppositional, and then he would have gotten arrested and taken in by court officers and roughed up. So that's healing, looking at folks beyond how we've defined them. And giving space for the human experience. You tell me you tell me I'm up against something really terrible, like being locked up for a number of years. I should have a reaction. Yeah. It's human.
Yes.
So, but we've criminalized reactions.
I'm feeling, I apologize. Continue.
No worries. No way. I'm done actually.
Ms. Moore?
I know that we're running out of time. Leticia, we'll jump into Hugh's question in just a moment. I just want to just acknowledge some of the things that was stated by Kenton. I think, and the bottom line is the human experience is the opportunity to be giving Black males the opportunity to be human, giving Black males the opportunity to have a human experience. That right, if they were told something that was devastating, the opportunity to respond and to be human and not be seen as violent or non-compliant or aggressive. I think that is the bottom line. But thank you so much for the work that you're doing, and we need more Black male therapists like you. We appreciate you so much, Leticia.
Yes, and to Dr. Hart for that. And we have a question for Mr. Campbell. So, in your practice, you've assisted individuals with arrangements for wills and estate planning and really creating a system of intergenerational wealth that we really don't talk about within the Black community. And so I'm wondering, in addition to finances and passing down the finances, what do you think, and how can today's Black men leave a legacy for the next generation of young Black men and teens coming up behind them?
I think the first order is to teach them how to make money and how to pass that money on. And I think one of the things that we don't do is that we don't really recognize the value of wealth. And I think it's something that we as folks need to do, because that's a struggle that I have in my practice when I see parents pass on and they leave wealth to the children. And what the children will end up doing is discounting that wealth significantly. And many times when they discount the wealth, they're not sharing it with people like us, they're sharing it with other folks. So that becomes a major, major issue. And I think, I've always felt that, for example, an area of significant wealth is real estate. And I've always subscribed to the theory that as Black folks, we normally buy real estate, whether or not it's 50, 60 acres down south or the house in the Northeast Bronx or whatever the case might be. We have a tremendous amount of wealth, and we might not traditionally invest in stocks and bonds, but we have that real estate. So when you pass on, do not sell that house for $200,000 if it is indeed worth $850,000, because in essence, what you're doing is that you're giving somebody $600,000, and you're giving $600,000 to a total stranger. So how do we avoid that? Avoiding that is educating people. And I will give you a classic example. There was a house in Brooklyn, and two sisters owned it. They were from Jamaica, two sisters owned it, and both sisters passed on, and they left two sets of family. One set of family decided they wanted to sell the house, so they sold the house for $600,000. Well, they entered into a contract to sell the house for $600,000, not recognizing that the other set of families needed to sign that contract. So when the one family could not close on the deal, then the person who went into contract for 600 sued everyone to force the sale. That's when I became involved. So of course I fought the sale, and I said, no, I don't think that this person wanted to sell it for 600,000. And when I did my research and did my appraisal, that same property, mind you, that they were selling for 600,000 had a value of $1.4 million. Okay. Wow. So when you have a property that's worth $1.4 million and you're selling it for 600, what are you doing? You're giving away $800,000 worth of wealth. And I think that's one of the things that I see happen very, very frequently in our community. And we need to educate folks that before you do anything, you know, we all have this device, the phone, and you will be surprised how critical this is. It is more than Facebook. It is more than Twitter and all of that stuff. It's a research tool, and we should use it. What is the value of that property that we have? How do I make sure I get the maximum dollar for that property? And that's one of the things that I preach, and I want to pass that on, because if we continuously give away the wealth, then there's nothing to pass on. And many times the parents will come in and they'll say, well, you know, I don't want the child to get their hand on the money right now, because sometimes the parents know the child better than we do. And they want to tie it up. And that's something that we do. Tie it up in such a way so it will be there, that they can gradually appreciate the value, invest and reinvest, and not necessarily squander it away and give it away for reasons that are very selfish and short-lived. So that becomes very important. And I just want to add one thing, because I see Dr. Hart and Mr. Kirby, you raised something, and I'm going to go back to this device. And Dr. Hart, anytime I go to a doctor, I research the doctor's credential before I go to that doctor. And the same thing goes for, you know, and I think it becomes important, because we have to be more proactive. And yes, I know what you talk about, Dr. Hart, because I read, I'm not a doctor, but I sue doctors. So I read the medical charts, and I see the disparity in medical care and treatment. And I see what happens in terms of the psychological care, the psychiatric care, the medical care. And that's something that I also see. And yes, there is indeed disparity. And from a person who uses my own medical care and treatment, when I go in, I ask for credentials, and I look for the folks that look like me, because I feel much more comfortable with those positions, and they're well credentialed, very well credentialed. And let's not, you know, because I think one of the things that we don't pay attention to, many of our professionals, and, you know, going back in history, you know, the first, you know, open heart surgeon and things of that nature, it's us, but we tend to forget it. So I just want to say that, you know, in terms of wealth and you know, passing that on, we have to learn how to invest, reinvest, have one property, use that piece of property, leverage it, purchase another piece of property, leverage it, purchase another piece of property. Because again, if you have 3 or 4 pieces of property, you know, you'll be worth a tremendous amount of money. And I always like to say that most people in the Northeast Bronx right now that owns one house, and if you're lucky enough to own 2 houses, hands down, you're already a millionaire. You're a millionaire. Why? Because the average 2-family house in the North Bronx is worth over $850,000. So if you own 2, you're on the way to, you're way past a millionaire. So we have to start recognizing that we have wealth, and we have to start acting as if we're millionaires, and start letting people define us and tell us that we are less than millionaires.
Ms. Stewart, I just wanted to quickly interject. We have so many powerful, positive comments to each one of the panelists. We do have some questions. One question that someone had for each of the panelists. I see Dr. Hart started to go in and answer that question. Thank you, Dr. Hart. And also, we are extending this conversation an extra 5 minutes. So I just want to ask the audience if it's okay, if you can stay with us, or we are quickly getting to the Q&A portion. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Alicia.
Sorry about that. Leticia, I apologize. We actually may have to extend it probably another, just to get through the questions. If there are questions in the Q&A, we may need to extend our discussion tonight another 10 to 15 minutes. You're welcome to stay on with us. If you have to leave, we understand, but hopefully you can stay because we do want to get your questions answered. So we are actually at our final question and we'll be opening it up to the Q&A.
Absolutely. And so thank you so much for that previous answer and for your feedback on the, the healthcare information, Mr. Campbell. So our final question, we'll start out with you. What is one word of advice that you would give to your younger self? And that one word of advice you would give to an adult Black male that is watching right now?
Everything is possible. And I think the advice basically is that and I said it before, don't let someone else define you. Define yourself, because the sky is the limit and we have all the opportunities ahead of us and we can accomplish anything at all that we need. And we should reach out to the left, to the right, behind us, in front of us, and ask questions. Seek resources, because we do have resources in our community, but we have to encourage folks to come and look for the resources. And I think that's where the mentorship becomes important. Mentorship is extremely critical, because whenever I meet a young person, my first question will be, what do you want to be? And sometimes people will come to me and they say, look, I want to work in your office. And my first question to them is, what do you want to be? Because don't just come and work in my office for a paycheck. Because if you want to be a doctor, I'm going to pick up the phone and call one of my friends that's a doctor, say, can you give this person a job in your office? Because again, I want you to go to the field in which you have an interest. If you want to do business, I'm going to do likewise, because we should start directing our young male to go in the direction, and so they can have proper mentorship, so they can be well-rounded, and they can be encouraged about what they see in society today.
Thank you for that, Mr. Campbell. Yes, mentorship, that is definitely key. So Dr. Hart, would you like to?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost piggybacking off of that. I never realized as a kid myself how big this community was and how powerful this community was, and how people who I had never met, and I was just so fortunate in life to meet one day, would be on my side as my biggest advocates. I've had patients and families refer their friends. I've never had a Black doctor. I've never had a doctor that cared this much about me. I'm so proud of you, young brother. People that I've never met, they were calling me I heard you were my cousin's doctor, and I just love that. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know. And I just didn't. So with that distinct pleasure and privilege that it is to know that there's so many people rooting for us. There's so many people that want us to do well and want everyone to do well, but especially people in our community. But with that, I really want people, and especially the kids, to not get in their own way, to not be their biggest enemies, because they are the only things that can limit themselves, to believe that you can be anything and no one can get in your way. You set your own boundaries and your own limits. And the idea that there are so many people that want you to do well, just reach out to anybody. I can think of how many people had to lay down, had to be sprayed with fire hoses, had to endure whippings, just for me to have an opportunity to be here and to not have to face those things. So with all of the amazing resilience and strength and grit that got us here to be able to be on this Zoom, all of us tonight, that's a whole lot of hard work. And like that said, we are the dreams of our ancestors who were enslaved in this country. There's so much that we can do, and it's such an exciting opportunity. I just always want to share this optimistically and from a positive lens about, yes, the system has not always been fairly set up. But you try to find me a professional Black man, Black woman who's not going to help reach up the next generation. I've never met one. So there's so many people. We're almost like the plants behind, the lines. We are so happy and so willing to reach and let anybody into the opportunities to shadow in the hospital, to work in a law firm, to work in how we can assist in mental health. There's so many professional avenues and atmospheres to live fulfilling and really rich, wealthy lives, because we all don't realize how wealthy our community is. We've listened too much to the outside stories, and it's time that we start telling the stories that are only going to make us stronger.
Yeah, I echo so much what everyone else is saying. I think if I had to speak to my younger self, the first thing I would tell little Kenton is don't worry, buddy, you're gonna grow into your head. But but for real, I would say at the end, I would tell younger Ken that, you know, you're gonna be challenged, and stick true to what you believe in your core. And I will tell other Black men who are out here doing different things, right? We all have different talents and abilities. I pride myself on paying it forward. I feel it's my responsibility. And I think that's something that I will always say to folks: what are we doing for the next generation? What are we, how are we passing down our lessons? Not talking at our young folks, but actually hearing them. Because so much of what we do, sometimes we get caught into it because we're so passionate. We want to help, right? There's that problem with that help thing, right? We want to serve with our young folks. We want to, because their reality is not going to be our reality. When they're my age, it's going to be a completely different world than it is now. So we've got to leave a curiosity when we're doing our connecting with these young people. So that's what I'll say there.
That was so well said. Thank you so much, Kenton, Dr. Hart, and Mr. Campbell, for those words of wisdom. I know that our attendees tonight are inspired and are feeling motivated from this conversation. Those that are watching us on live through Facebook and YouTube, I know they're also feeling inspired. We appreciate all that you have poured out this evening. We are almost at the end. We do want to take questions at this time. So if there are any questions in the Q&A, Alicia, please go ahead and read them off.
Yes, there are 2 open questions in the Q&A. The first question is from NB, and this is for Mr. Campbell. He would like to know if there's any information that you can leave on yourself so that he can follow up after. So if you have any business information, I guess this will go to everyone. If you have any your business information that you can put in the chat, or links where people can follow up with you for questions or services, if you can do that for us, that would be great. We have one question from Vince that Dr. Hart started to answer already. Thank you, Dr. Hart. So Vince said, great discussion so far. Question for all 3 panelists. I was in Newark, New Jersey yesterday and witnessed the tail end of a carjacking joyride. We have 3 very successful Black men on the panel. What is the difference between you 3 and the young men, and how does that relate to the discussion of prejudice? And he thanks you guys for your answers in advance.
Not much. There's not much of a difference. I think it's, I feel being Black in this country, options are limited, right? And something Dr. Hart mentioned earlier, you know what you see. So I think the 3 of us have had the luxury and privilege of having been shown additional options, right? If we believe people aren't by nature bad people, and we believe in humanity, but people operate within the realities that they feel that they only know. So I think when you think that with that frame, it makes it easier for us to see the whole person, not their most vulnerable moment.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of spoke to a little bit in the chat, but no, I mean, you're right. It's a coin toss. I mean, we are all born into our existences and could have easily been born into a different existence. And the idea that we're this rat race that we call the world, we're just chasing the carrots or the sticks that are either in front or behind of us, and how that is fundamentally different. So like so many of us on this call, to Kenton's point, we've had very different experiences and so much privilege, along with a lot of Americans that are born in this country compared to individuals who are born in other parts of the world. But I do think that there is an opportunity that, as much as the system has been set up and structured to produce very unfair, unjust, and biased results, we still have to hold each other accountable and ourselves accountable for the actions that we do choose, and realize that the system set him up for this trap and he fell into it, unfortunately. And yes, there were things the support structures that might not have been there for him. But I think it's important that we don't just say it was all the man and he had nothing. He had no choice. Well, he made a choice. And yes, it wasn't the best choice in that moment. He fell for that trap. But at the end of the day, what are we going to do going forward? Are we just going to lock them up and not rehabilitate them and then and continue this cycle? Or are we going to use this as a teachable moment and an opportunity for all of us to grow? So I think that, there probably isn't much different besides of some of the things that we were exposed to that gave us different privilege. But it's important that we also hold each other accountable and ourselves accountable and not just make excuses for bad behavior. But it's terribly unfortunate that this individual was probably set up on a path that led him to that very day.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to add that sometimes we need to really pay attention to the younger folks, and we need to give them credit where credit is due. We need to recognize their accomplishments and do certain things. And as I sat here and I think as I, kind of look back when I first started practicing law, and I recall, being in the housing court back then, and back in those days, there weren't any lawyers there that looked like me. The landlords, they were not Black. They were all, white landlords that would come into the courts. And I remember there was one Black lady, she was always there, one Black lady. And for some reason, she owned a couple of houses and she was like the sole person there. And I recall going in one day and I worked for legal services and I represented a client against her. And, I won my case. And as I walked out of the courtroom and was down the hallway, I heard her yelling my name. And I'm trying to, move really fast. And she said, no, it's not about the case. I just want to talk to you. And she stopped me and she said, come, let me talk to you. And she said, even though I lost the case and you won the case, I just want to tell you one thing, that I'm very proud of you today as a Black man in America. And I think that goes a long way. It goes a long way because that's something that resonated with me from that day, through life, because that people appreciate what you do. And if we turn and appreciate someone when they do the right thing, then they might just decide to stay on that right path all the time, as opposed to veering to the left or veering, in the wrong direction. So we need to recognize that and give credit where credit is due and encourage folks sometimes.
I think that is a powerful just statement, Mr. Campbell, and such a great way to really sort of end this part of our discussion tonight. I know we are far beyond time, and we do appreciate each of you for staying with us. We're going to close in about 3 more minutes. We want to first celebrate each and every one of you that decided to be here with us tonight. Thank you so much for being with us and for sticking with us to the end. We want to celebrate our Black male panelists. Can we just celebrate them for a second? Absolutely amazing, astounding, articulate, phenomenal Black men. We appreciate you and do want to take the moment to say that we are proud of you. We are so proud of you for being our leaders, for being our role models, for being the image that we need in our society. Thank you so much for not giving up, even when it was hard. Thank you so much for doing all that you do. You are absolutely appreciated. So we thank each and every one of you, Dr. Hart, Mr. Campbell, and Mr. Kenton. Thank you so much. We are going to show one last quick video, and then we're going to end. Oh, sorry, Leticia, did you also want to say something quickly?
No, I was just saying, and also thank you to Kevin Riley.
And Mr. Riley for coming with us, but he had to leave. Thank you so much. I'm sure he'll be watching us later. Kristen, can you cue up that last video? And then we're going to close out with some fun music. And to continue our community, our Black males. Again, we love you all so much. We thank you for being with us, and we wish you a very safe and lovely night, and happy Black History Month. Let's cue up that music, Alicia.
It's time.
Oh, and Miss Moore and Miss Stewart, I don't know if you missed it, but we did have a few requests for a part 2. So I let everyone know we'll work on making that happen. Thank you so much for everyone for attending. Thank you.
We do have a part 2 coming up for Black women and for Women's History Month in March. So just look out for that invitation because we'll definitely be sending you the invite. Thank you all so much for your love. We appreciate you. Alicia, are you ready?
And I also just want to give a little special shout out to our planning committee and those who helped to make this event possible. So Kristen Maiku, Donald Sherpa, Catherine Campbell, Alicia Small for monitoring our chat. Thank you so much. And also thanks to our board of directors, and special thanks, of course, to our DJ Alicia, who's about to kick off some music for you guys again.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.